Hello, Gene Schwimmer here. Welcome to today's vlog. The subject that I want to talk about today, I think, is just going to be a very short treatment. Won't require much time, so I'm just going to get a couple of little items out of the way before I get to the topic for today. The first one is I'm a little bit late with this, but I got a new subscriber. Right now I'm just they're trickling in so I can talk to them individually. So I want to welcome Paulo 88202 202 to the family. Welcome to the family. Thanks for subscribing. Paulo's been a subscriber for, I don't know, 2 or 3 days, so I'm glad I could finally welcome you. Now, I want to, well, here's the shorter one. Jim Jordan, one of the Republican representatives, who, well, he is going to be on the Intelligence Committee. He was not on the Intelligence Committee in the House. He was just transferred to the House Intelligence Committee. So he will be questioning the witnesses whom the Democrats intend to call. That is a good move for the Republicans because he is a very good questioner if you've watched him in action. Now, here is a tweet from Representative Jordan. This is, we were talking about the process that the Democrats were going to have, this supposedly open and fair process. Well, it's partly going to be open. It doesn't look like it's going to be fair. Here's the tweet. It's, oh, well, before I get to the tweet, just mention very quickly that Adam Schiff, the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, he can call any witness that he wants. He has already put out a list of the witnesses he will be calling to testify beginning next week. So I will definitely be at least trying to listen to these hearings, listen to as much as I can. I do have a day job, but he has been preparing the list for a while. He has been interviewing witnesses in secret for a while. Now he's going to have some witnesses testify publicly, but the Republicans, remember, they are supposed to be able to call witnesses too. But as I said in an earlier vlog, the Republicans not just call anybody they want. It has to pass muster with Chairman Schiff. He has to approve everyone, and he is requiring the Republicans to submit a list, submit a formal letter stating why each witness whom they want to call is relevant, and he listed 3 specific questions, Schiff did, that he is requiring the witnesses that the Republicans call to address. Those are the restrictions so far. You would think that would be bad enough if you're talking about fairness, but here is a new one. This is a tweet from Jim Jordan. I'll just read it. I'll put it up. I'll read it to you. Republicans only have till Saturday, that's tomorrow, till Saturday to request witnesses for all open hearings. Adam Schiff decides which witnesses testify, if any. Schiff decides when witnesses testify, if at all, and the President's counsel, the President's lawyer, is still excluded. Does this sound like due process? No, it doesn't. They've got till Saturday, the Republicans do, to submit a list of all the witnesses whom they intend to call. And it can't just be a list. The list has to be accompanied by detailed letters explaining why these witnesses should be called. And at the end of all that, Schiff decides when they get to testify, if they get to testify at all. Okay, that's a second short item I wanted to talk about. I just have one more before we get to our main subject, and it's to reply to a comment by a commenter. The commenter, it's Juan Isaac. He's commenting about a vlog I did, I think, a couple of days ago. I'm not going to read the whole comment because I only want to talk about one little part of it. The comment is about the vlog I did about the suggestion on my part, and I also mentioned Senator Tom Cotton, that if Mexico cannot deal with these drug cartels, that we should send troops in there. We should think about that, and possibly, just as Turkey did on their border with Syria, establish a security zone. Now, just to reiterate what I've said a couple of times or a few times in the past, my policy is that the vlog is where I state my opinion, so I really want to leave the comment section to all of you. I don't want to jump in and start arguing with those of you who take the trouble to comment. I only feel that once in a while, if I need to correct something or if I feel that an interesting point has been raised on which I want to expand, then I will jump in and comment. Now, there's a third case, a new kind of case, which is one I want to start with this comment, which is to clarify something if I think the commenter didn't get what I said. And it could be my fault. It could just be that I wasn't clear. So I'm just going to put up the comment just to show you the comments there. But I just want to address this one sentence here about invading Mexico and setting up this security zone. The last invasion that went after Pancho Villa almost started a war, and Pershing never got Villa. And that's correct. In fact, what I'm doing is in the description, I'm linking to a Wikipedia article about Pancho Villa and that whole history, in case you want to read it, because it is a very interesting history to read, and you can get the whole detail if you want to read it, and I suggest that you do. So Juan is correct. We didn't get Pancho Villa, but what we did do, well, my point was, this is one of the things I want to clarify, was it's not whether we got Pancho Villa or not, or whether it was successful or not. And it was successful to a point, because though we didn't get Villa, we destroyed a lot of his followers, his soldiers, his army, whatever you want to call it. And even though we didn't get Villa, we did stay in Mexico, and it did pressure the Mexican government at that time to go after Pancho Villa themselves, which they did. They didn't get him either. We negotiated with Mexico. There was a diplomatic solution. Pancho Villa, I think it was because, I'd have to look it up, but I think it was because that Mexican president, Pancho Villa, was leading a revolution. He wasn't just a thief or a terrorist. That president left office or was forced out of office. I don't remember the exact details, but the point was that Villa gave up his revolution. He was given an amnesty, and he was also assassinated when he decided to get into politics about 2 or 3 years later. He was assassinated in, I think, 1920. So at the end of the day, we didn't have to get him. He got gotten by fellow Mexicans. But the only point I wanted to make was that it's a precedent that we did go in there, however it turned out. And the second part I want to address here, and this is the more important one, Pershing never got Villa. If the U.S. does invade 100 miles or even 10 miles into Mexico to make a neutral zone, per se, the U.S. just annexed more of Mexico, and 20 million new Mexican Americans will be ruled by D.C., I doubt white supremacists will want that. Okay, well, as I said, Juan is entitled to his opinion, so I'm not going to talk about the white supremacist portion, if that's his opinion. I just thank you for taking time to state your opinion. You've got other things to do. It takes time to sit down and write something, especially this was pretty lengthy, and I appreciate it. The only thing I want to address is just to clarify what I meant, because I was talking about, well, we have right now along the Turkey-Syria border, we have a security zone. Turkey has not annexed part of Syria. Turkey is not ruling Syria. It's just that the Kurdish fighters are not inside that security zone. We also have, if you want other precedents, in Lebanon in either the late 70s, I think it was the early 80s, Israel had a security zone between Lebanon and Israel. It was on the Lebanese side of the border, and the Christian phalangists were controlling that area with security help provided by the Israelis. But the Israelis never ruled that area. They never annexed the area. There's also the precedent today of the Palestinian Authority, or you could also include Gaza, where there's a corridor along the Gaza-Egyptian border to maintain security. You do have these instances, for instance, when terrorists were coming in, suicide bombers from Jenin, from the Palestinian Authority, the Israelis went in and they cleaned out Jenin. Now, since then, there has been no trouble. And getting back to Pancho Villa, after Pershing, General Pershing, the American general, went in, there were no more attacks against the United States. Pancho Villa never again came into the United States and attacked American towns. So that objective was accomplished. We weren't trying to rule Mexico or take over Mexico or destroy Mexico. We just wanted these attacks stopped. And while we're getting back to Mexico, well, let me just concentrate on the PA again, the Palestinian Authority. It's just that the attacks stopped. Also, they put up a security wall, right, which would be equivalent to the wall that Trump is putting up. But the point there, again, is that the suicide bombings stopped. The Israelis go in when they have to, but they only go in for security reasons. Critics want to call it an occupation. But, well, in Gaza, there are no Israelis at all. In the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas rules. The Palestinian Authority rules in the Palestinian Authority area. The Israelis do not govern. All they do is prevent attacks on themselves. That's what I was talking about. So when you get back to Mexico, well, who is running that part of Mexico along the border anyhow? It's not Mexico. You talk about whether we would go in and rule and govern Mexico. Well, the Mexicans aren't governing that part of the country either. The drug cartels, they govern, they control. The Mexican army can't even provide security. As I showed when I put up an article in that earlier vlog, the cartels defeated the Mexican army in battle. So it's the drug cartels who are ruling. So I would even venture to say that if we, and I have to be honest, I mean, let's just be honest, it's possible, of course, that I think that we would send troops into Mexico. Tom Cotton, the senator I referred to earlier, he said it would just be to go in to get particular people or to fight particular people and then come back. That's the other point, which is what happened in 1916, 1917, that our going into Mexico prompted the Mexican government to go in there, and then we eventually came out. But the point is that if we had, and again the odds are very, very, very small, but if we did establish a security zone, I think the Mexicans living in that area, whatever the Mexicans felt in 1916, I don't think they would feel that way today. If they had security, if Mexico were able to come in with our help to govern their own country again instead of these drug cartels, I think the Mexican government would be embarrassed, but maybe just as that earlier Mexican government was prompted or inspired, however you want to put it, to take action against Pancho Villa subsequent to our going in there, then if we go in there, never mind the security zone, if we just go in there, that might prompt the Mexican government to do something about it, to take it more seriously, just as Trump's threat of tariffs. And that's the other thing. Trump did not impose the tariffs. He merely threatened to impose the tariffs, and Mexico put 26,000 troops on the border, and we don't hear anything about a border immigration, illegal immigration crisis anymore, do we? No, we don't. So again, I'm not arguing with Juan Isaac as far as his opinion goes. If he still thinks that we would annex part of Mexico, then he's entitled to his opinion. Obviously, I don't agree with him, but I'm not debating him. I'm merely clarifying what I meant, because my impression from reading his comment was that he thought that I was advocating annexing part of Mexico, and I wasn't. I'm just talking about security. That's all I meant. And now, finally, we get to the subject that I wanted to talk about. I had mentioned in a vlog about which Democratic candidate I thought would be the best for for President Trump to face in the election that I was hoping for a brokered convention. Well, Michael Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York, he filed in Alabama to meet a deadline. He filed to be on the primary ballot in Alabama. The indications are that he's going to run for president because he doesn't think that Biden can win. He doesn't think that any of the candidates can win, but I'm specifically talking about Biden because Bloomberg would be going in as a moderate. I mean, a moderate who wants strict gun control and wants to tell you what kind of sugary drinks you can drink. So if you don't know what that's about, as I've mentioned in the past, I lived in New York for 40 years. In New York City, when he was mayor, he wanted to limit the size of cups that you could, say at Five Guys or Burger King, whatever that you could. We called him Nanny Bloomberg, so I don't consider that very moderate. Well, maybe in New York it is if you live on the Upper West Side of New York, but for most of us, I don't think that's exactly moderate. But in fairness to him, I have to say, other than that, he was a good mayor. He came right after Giuliani, and he was the last mayor under which New York, in my opinion, was livable. It was when de Blasio came after him, that's what finally made me decide I had to leave, because apparently the citizens of New York didn't learn anything from Dinkins, David Dinkins, the mayor before Giuliani. Dinkins was a terrible mayor, and I would have thought they would have learned something after putting in Giuliani and Bloomberg and seeing a well-run city, but apparently they didn't learn anything. So the point I want to make, I'm starting to digress again as I often do, is that this increases the chance of a brokered convention, because Bloomberg, he's worth $52 billion, and a lot of that is securities, so a lot of that is liquid. He can easily raise $2 or $3 billion to run for president, compared to Trump, I think, has raised about a billion, maybe he'll have $1 billion, $1.5 billion. That's just pocket change to Bloomberg, so he can easily afford to run a campaign. But if he siphons votes off, as he probably would, I would guess, from Biden, that would be the obvious competitor, the progressives are never going to go for Bloomberg. Keep in mind that Bloomberg is a billionaire. He's a billionaire Wall Streeter. So that makes him even worse in the eyes of the progressives. But the point is that he could draw off enough votes if he does enter the race and advertises heavily in the primaries, throw the primaries into a brokered convention. Now, if it goes into a brokered convention, as I said in the past, it's going to create a lot of chaos, because the Democrats will be, number one, 90 days away from an election without having a candidate, and who knows how long it's going to take to get a candidate. But you have to remember also the Democrats' superdelegate system. They had that in the last election, as they've had in previous elections, where you had these superdelegates who were allowed to cast votes for the candidate whom they wanted, and it was close, remember, between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, and the delegates went with Hillary Clinton, gave her the candidacy. It made Sanders and his supporters very, very angry, so they changed the rules that on the first ballot, but only on the first ballot, the superdelegates cannot vote. So the first ballot is the only chance for the rank and file primary voters to choose a candidate. If no Democratic candidate garners enough votes to secure the nomination on the first ballot, then it will go to a second ballot. That's when the horse trading starts, but it's also when the superdelegates can vote. And there's a possibility, I don't know how much of a possibility it is. Well, I don't know how much of a possibility realistically it is that it will be a brokered convention, but I think the odds are better than they have ever been, at least in my memory. But if it does go to a second ballot, then the superdelegates can vote. And they may want to settle the squabbling among the Sanders camp and the Warren camp camp and the Biden camp and who knows how many other camps by going with a dark horse and choosing Bloomberg. And then Bloomberg would be the Democratic candidate. I'm not even going to try to predict what would happen in that case, but I think it will be very interesting, whatever it turns out to be, especially if you're a Republican. This is, again, one of those times when I wish somebody would come up with popcorn futures, and I would I would go along popcorn futures, because this is going to be something to see. I think there will be a lot of popcorn consumed by Republicans watching the show, and maybe throw in some buffalo chicken wings. That would be my preference. But my real preference would be, my ultimate preference would be for all of you, thumbs up if you like this video. Share it with anybody you would like the video to. Got any comments? Put them in the comment section below the video. Subscribe, 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 and come back and see me again. That's my real greatest wish. Come back and see me again. I'm going to look forward to seeing all of you again. And until I do see you all again, bye.